Good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew McCoy. I'm the holdover district clerk from the last school year. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. I will call the roll. Ms. Burton? Here. Mr. Doré? Here. Ms. Green?
Here.
Mr. Howard? Here. Mr. Lamar? Here. Mr. Levenstein?
Here.
Ms. Mineo?
Here.
Mr. Stridiron?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
We'll now move on to agenda item 2.1, the administrative oath, superintendent of schools. Dr. Jacqueline Manning Campbell, if you will raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and I will faithfully discharge
and I faithfully discharge
the duties of Office of the Superintendent of Schools
the duties of the Office of Superintendent of Schools
of the Newburgh Enlarged City School District
of the Newburgh Enlarged City School District
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, ma'am.
Thank you.
We'll save some steps. I'm going to go in this order. So Mr. Duray, if you want to stand up. Sure. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the Office of Trustee of the Board of Education
of the Office of Trustee of the Board of Education
according to the best of my abilities.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the Office of Trustee of the Board of Education
of the Office of Trustee of the Board of Education
according to the best of my abilities.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, sir. Stand and raise your right hand. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the Office of Trustee of the Board of Education
of the Office of Trustee of the Board of Education
according to the best of my abilities.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to nominate Carol Mineo. Ms. Mineo has been nominated by Mr. Howard. Is there any other nominations? Mr. DeRay?
I nominate Darren Stridiron.
Is there any other nominations for president of the board? Okay, I'll go in the order they were called.
Mr. McCoy, can I say something before the vote? Or not?
Yeah, we can go for discussion, sure.
I just want to read something. Thank you for the nomination of president of the school board. We are starting a new chapter in the Newburgh School District, and I believe it's time for new ideas with a focus towards success. Before you vote, I would like you to know what my priorities would be for this new year. Priority 1, strategic focus on making all our schools safe and efficient. Priority 2, any decisions presented to the board for approval would be required to be data-driven and student-staff focused. Priority 3, all board committees meetings will be in the evening. That will allow for greater community involvement and remove the barrier for those board members that work during the day from participating fully in the decision-making process. Priority 4, all board committees will have community/parent and bargaining unit participation and input at every meeting. How can the board have full understanding of the effects of the proposals without hearing all sides of the issues? And priority 5, every board meeting will have 1 or 2 items of importance for the board to discuss in a workshop format. The board needs to publicly address these items to improve results and transparency. The Newburgh School Board needs to be accountable to the community, staff, and students that we serve. We cannot forget that we are public servants. Our success is measured by the work we do every day to provide the opportunity for success to everyone who works and studies here. I would be honored to lead you in this endeavor. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on president of the board? None being, I will call the roll. This is for Ms. Mineo to be president of the board. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
No.
Ms. Green?
No.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
No.
Mr. Levenstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo has been elected president of the board. Nominations for vice president. I will open up the floor for nominations for vice president of the board. Ms. Green?
Mr. Stridiron.
Ms. Mineo?
Mr. Howard.
Is there any other nominations for vice president? We will vote on Mr. Stridiron first, since that was the first one in order of the business. This one is for Mr. Stridiron to be vice president of the board. Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levenstein? No. Ms. Mineo?
No.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
No.
Ms. Burton?
No.
That nomination fails. We'll now go to the second nomination. Phil Howard has been nominated by Carol Mineo. I will call the roll for Mr. Howard to be vice president of the board. Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
No.
Mr. Levenstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
No.
Ms. Green?
No.
Mr. Howard has been elected as vice president of the board. Moving on to 210, I will now administer the oath of office to the new elected president and vice president. Ms. Mineo, if you'd raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York.
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
And I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of President of the Board of Education
of the office of President of the Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Vice President of the Board of Education
of the office of Vice President of the Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to item 2.11. I will entertain a motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. We'll now move on to 2.12, annual appointments, 1 through 29. Is there any items anybody would like to take out? I'll entertain a motion on 1 through 29.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Now move on to 2.13, designations 1 through 4. Is there, I'll entertain a motion? Is there a second? Motion and a second. Is there any discussions? I'll call the roll. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Move on to 2.14. Entertain a motion. Is there a second? The motion is second. Is there any discussion? I'll call the roll. Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Move on to 2.15. I'll entertain a motion. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'll call the roll. Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
I'll now turn the gavel over to the President of the Board. That's Ms. Mineo.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: matter made confidential under FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, the review of programs and placements of students with disabilities, collective bargaining under the Taylor Law, NTA, CSCA, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. So moved. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton? Yes. Mr. DeRay? Yes. Ms. Green? Yes. Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll be back in, I hope, less than an hour. Public discussion and comments on agenda items. Please refer to the regulations regarding discussion and comments.
These are all non-agenda, ma'am.
Okay, so we do have 3 people for non-agenda. Board members, can I move them to now and do non-agenda now? Everybody okay with that? Okay, so the first person I have is Ms. Starla Burks. And I'm going to remind everybody, please don't use anybody's name when you come up to the podium. It's one of the rules that we have. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome, Dr. Campbell, to the Newburgh District. I'm here on behalf of the Parent Alliance Group. I'm going to read a letter that we wrote in response to your welcoming. Thank you for accepting this position, and we welcome you to the Newburgh community. We are pleased to see our newly appointed superintendent is committed to equity, transparency, and access to services and programs for all students in our district. We are hopeful that you will bring about the transformation needed for all our students to succeed. Our children deserve the best and could not be happier to see the changes coming to Newburgh. To see that change is coming to Newburgh, excuse me. The Newburgh Parent Alliance would like to partner with you in those efforts. As you may be aware, several incidents have occurred within the district, leaving our children feeling unsafe, worried, and discriminated against. We live in tumultuous times, hindering academic success for students nationwide and leaving our children at a disadvantage. Therefore, we must respond urgently as a community and stakeholders. As per district policy, the community is essential in supporting school initiatives. This is our way of extending support to you while being a part of the shared decision-making table that the district heavily emphasizes. We look forward to meeting with you to discuss goals and concerns. We would like to be able to collaborate and assist with rebuilding our school district. We hope that collectively we can provide a beacon of hope to our Black and brown children in this community. Thank you in advance for your time and attention. We look forward to meeting with you again. Welcome to the Newburgh Enlarged City School District. I'm not sure if you know in detail all of the situations or occurrences that have happened, but they're horrible in a sense. This community is 90%, let's say, Black, and this is our district. We send our kids to school with the idea of our ownership of our kids. I don't want to say it like that, but you are now the legal guardian of our kids for those 8 hours. So if I send my kid to school, I don't expect him to be humiliated. I don't expect him to be belittled. I don't expect him to be looked over because he's there with something he can't change as far as his color, his skin, and his gender. I validate and I boost my kid up. So when I send him home, before I send him out, I already inform him as a Black male, which is I shouldn't have to do, but because of society, I have to inform him that he goes into a schoolhouse, or anywhere for that purpose, with 3 strikes against him. He's Black, he's a male, he's intelligent. Because you choose to feel inferior to that shouldn't be his demise or his fault. He should be able to exploit that excellency, exploit that Blackness, exploit that intelligence, exploit all of that without being victimized by people who he can't defend himself up against. So those are the changes we're looking for. It's not just against young Black males, it's against young Black and brown females. We have an issue with natural hair. I have my natural hair tonight, and I look amazing. So there's no reason why, these issues should be brought to the forefront, because not only Black women or Black young girls wear extensions or wear braids, That's a national thing. Everybody wears them. But, for other people, they're called clip-ins. But that's what we do. So we want to address these issues, but we want to address them in a more formal format. We don't want to be aggressive, because that's what you're expecting of us, to come in here and be aggressive and, brutal. And, we're just strong people. That's our nature, but we don't want to have to express that all the time. So if we could come to a common ground and we could work together to give our kids what they need to be successful, to go out here in this world where they have a right, that's a constitutional right. They have a freedom to express themselves through hair or however they choose to. So because, you feel that they shouldn't, that's an issue. So these are things we need to address, and we hope we could get it done and get it done well and in decency. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Carla Johnson Broder. No? Yes? Okay. Courtney Allen.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Oh, that was nice. I'm also here standing with the Parent Alliance as well. Welcome to our new superintendent. I wrote out a little something, and I'll be quick as possible. First, we would like to thank you guys for making, that good public statement in regards to the unprofessional behavior that was, displayed on social media. We won't say any names because we promise we won't say any names. I got you. But we want to know, going forward, how can you assure us in confidence that the staff is creating a safe, inviting environment for our children while they're in school? How can you assure us that the staff is not harming our kids with acts of implicit biases and blatant racism or discrimination? How could our children feel comfortable reporting to an environment where the adults they are supposed to trust belittle and disrespect them? What policies will you put in place to ensure this does not happen again? And if it does, that there will be consequences? Where is the code of conduct for staff members? Does it exist? If so, please inform us so we'll have this information. We just want fairness to be done when it comes to our children. That's what we're fighting for. We want it to be just and fair. So I know you guys have seen me at the last couple of meetings. I'm going to continue to come. The Parent Alliance is going to continue to come. And we want answers to this. We want to be able to sit down and have open dialogue and speak with you guys in reference to what's going on with our children. Because if we don't speak for them, no one else does. So we're asking that in the future that we can sit down with you guys, have a conversation, and move forward. Not even so much move forward. We want answers. We want some kind of dialogue. We want communication, as I've been crying out for the last couple of meetings. I'm still stuck on the whole threat against Black students in the district. Again, I won't say any names. But I still want some kind of communication. This is my third or fourth meeting coming to, and I still haven't heard any update or anything like that. But again, we're here, we're not going anywhere, and we want you guys to know that we're not going anywhere. We want answers, and we want people to be held accountable. We just want accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now up to my section, and, Mr. Forget, our Deputy Superintendent, sorry.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening I have one item for your consideration, item 5.1.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Second. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Doré? Yes. Ms. Green? Yes. Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levenstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my item.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. We're going to move on to my section, and I have items 6.1 and 6.2. The first one is a resolution to adopt the policy on the first read, and that's independent education evaluation. And then the second item is the resolution to authorize the board president to execute a retainer agreement with Shaw, Pearlson, May, and Lambert. I'd like to entertain, would any member like to separate out any of these items?
I'd like to separate out 6.1 for discussion, please.
You want 6.1, okay. So let's start with 6.1, please. I'd like to entertain a motion. So moved. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Green? Yes. Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
We're going to move on to item 6.2. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call. Mr. Stridiron? No? Yes.
Which one was separated out?
But we separated them, there's two items, so I just separated them both out.
Okay, so we just voted on 6.1?
We did at 6.1, now we're on 6.2.
Thank you.
Are there any questions on 6.2? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Doré? Yes. Ms. Green?
Thank you. That concludes my items. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Elementary, Ms. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam President. Elementary Curriculum Instruction presents items 7.1 and 7.2 for your approval.
Would any member like to separate any of these items? Yes, sir.
7.2, please.
Okay, so we'll start with 7.1. I'd like to entertain a motion on 7.1, please. Questions or discussion on 7.1? Yes, sir.
Can we just make sure that this year, when we have the summer program with the playtime, that's organized playtime, that there's proper water for the students and the staff? Because last year we had a lot of students that were dehydrated in the heat during the first week, and they had no water at the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just want clarity. Are teachers also being trained in this process? I read through the contract, and I understand that they're providing their staff to come in, but am I misunderstanding that they're also providing professional development to staff?
No, it's like a field day for our exceptional learners, like the Fun Fridays. So we have the Leave and Learns for some students, and then some of the exceptional learners that will not be able to go on the Leave and Learns will have an opportunity to have, it's SEL-based, team building, and they do have facilitators. If the teachers want to participate with their classes, they're welcome to do that out there with the students too.
Thank you, Madam President. So, Playworks, this was under a different name last year? Another different, same name, same group? And it's a part of the summer program for Fridays where the kids are traveling, going away, and doing different things?
It's for our exceptional learners, yep. Who attend school Monday through Fridays based on their programs, their 12-month program.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lamar? Okay, it's all right. Mr. Stridiron?
I wasn't aware that it was the same group as last year, because I got some feedback that this group last year was not too good. So I looked for last year's, and I didn't see Playworks. So I thought it might have been a different. Was there any kind of feedback from the teachers? Hey, we love this. You got it all documented?
So we did have feedback, both positive and negative, and you're right. It was a very, very hot day, one of the Fridays, and we did have to bring in more water. And some teachers were asked to participate, and they had some other choices of things to do. So yeah, there was both positive and negative feedback, but the kids loved it too, the feedback from the students.
Okay, just want to make sure that it's going to run smoother than it did last year.
It's going to run smoothly.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions on 7.1? Roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Doré? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
We're going to move on to item 7.2. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion on 7.2? Yes, Mr. Stridiron. And Ms. Green, you have a question also, so you'll be next.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'm looking at the contract, and it's for a total of 4 sessions with 20 teachers each, so 80 teachers. So how do you choose who gets the training? And once this training is over, how many teachers in our district will have been trained? What percentage?
So this is voluntary training that they can sign up for over the summer. It's not mandatory training. It's to enhance the PD that takes place all year long. If they want more practice with the toolkits and understanding some of the resources that go with the program. I can't tell you a percentage off the top of my head, but if they were to fill up, which that would be a wonderful thing, then we can certainly provide additional PD. Does that answer your question?
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes.
Go
Well,
ahead.
so if we sign this contract and nobody signs up for it,
Then we
still-
won't run them, and we won't be charged for them. There's a sign-up window, and if they're not even halfway filled by the time of the dates of the PD, we won't run them, and the company understands that.
Okay, so another question I have is, the program itself has not proven to be effective over the period of time that we've been running it. Why do we continue to still have this program and spend money on training when there are other programs out there that are more effective?
So
Ms. Moriarty? Go ahead.
research says that you have to have 3 to 5 years of data to monitor whether it's successful or not. And we do have data, especially in our K-2, that shows that our students are reading, more kids in kindergarten this year are reading on grade level at the end of the year than we've had in the past. So our K-2, we have, which was the first year that we implemented our core in K-2, and our data does show an improvement of more students out of the red, which is the far 2 to 3 years behind on grade level. So we do have data that says it is working.
I'm going to jump to Ms. Green first. Go ahead, Ms. Green.
That was going to be part of my question. How effective is the program in terms of K to 2 or 3 to 5? And there are other programs out there. So I'm just wondering, why is it that we are so gung-ho with this one in terms of looking at other reading programs as well that have proven to be pretty good? And Norton Gillingham comes to mind.
Ms. Moriarty?
So again, there's no magic silver bullet of a reading program to get students to be able to read on a grade level. Teaching reading is a very scientific, complex process. But again, 3 to 5 years of research and data, we would need to monitor. We're invested, and I think we are demonstrating growth, especially and with our Ls as well. So it's not just with a specific subgroup, but all subgroups are beginning to show progress.
Mr. Stronach, do you have a follow-up question? And then
I had a follow-up.
Go ahead. Ms. Green, then Mr. Howard, Mr. Lamar, Ms. Burton. Well, I'll get to you all.
I'm just wondering if teachers are also at the table when it comes to these reading programs, because I have not heard anything about how teachers feel about the programs that are being implemented. So I'm just wondering if the teachers are at the table when these decisions are made.
So there is a process to have these decisions, and we've been providing teachers with surveys and feedback loops to be able to give feedback as we move forward throughout the years.
Mr. Ford, you have a response?
So we adopted a new policy this year which addresses curriculum programs and supplemental resources that requires a committee and a team to be a part of the review and the analysis of 2 to 3 different programs to be piloted and small-scale test to determine the impact that we could possibly have moving forward. So this program was adopted prior to that policy going into effect. This was a policy I worked with Mr. Agostero on, and some of you remember Mr. Agostero as our assistant superintendent for C&I many years ago. So we designed this new opportunity so that moving forward in the future, all programs get vetted, they get selected, they get piloted before we go full scale. But that was this is prior to that.
Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. So I hear from two of my colleagues that they feel that, or they're hearing, or they've been told that this program is ineffective. Then I hear a counter from our CNI, Assistant Superintendent, that it is effective. So I think that if we get a report to the board, let us know how impactful, how effective, what is the efficacy of the program, who is benefiting from the program, how is it impacting the different demographics in the district, and I think we can get a better picture of what's really going on here, because as you hear one thing and then you hear a counter to it, that doesn't really answer the question, because if it's a program that's not effective, then we need to do something else. If it's a program that is effective, then obviously that's coming from a small number of people. So I think we need to get a better idea of what is going on, who it's coming from, so that we can be more data-driven.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Forget wants to respond, Mr. Baird. Then I have everybody's name down. I won't forget you.
So I will work with Mrs. Moriarty to take a look at that data, probably using some of the schools that initiated it a few years ago. I believe Dales Gate was one of the initial schools that's more aligned and has probably implemented most of the comprehensive program, and we are seeing some growth there. So perhaps not us reporting, perhaps it would be the building staff that could come and talk to you about the growth, the shifts, the struggles they had, but also the outcomes that we're seeing with kids. And we could definitely do that. Let's talk from the classroom level.
Mr. Baer?
I just want to briefly describe, again, as has been mentioned, this program has been in various states of development. The ARC core is being developed, K2, in buildings this year. In one building specific, and because the questions been brought to my attention for our exceptional learners, how does this work as well? Certainly there are other supplemental programs, one that Ms. Green mentioned, that certainly have efficacy as well. But in speaking to this one principal about the 125 kindergartners that went through this with fidelity, only 8 are below grade level. Only 8 are in red. He said for the first time when they were doing grade level meetings, they normally try to mix high and low and try to put enough, there's more low than high, and that's a hard balance when you're making class to be a little balanced. He says the first time I had a problem where I had so many low kids that I had to figure out where to put them with the high kids. So we need to be open-minded to the fact that certainly every building is experiencing this differently. Some buildings are more committed to than others because they've had more time with it. It is definitely a process, and the professional development provided continues to help teachers become comfortable. We recognize the challenges. Ms. Moriarty is very on top of this and works very closely with the building principals. We understand some of those struggles. But when I hear that kind of data, I need to keep an open mind with this. That's an unprecedented data point for Newburgh to have only 8 students in the red after a year of the program in kindergarten.
Mr. Lamar?
Yeah, I was wondering, I know there's certain schools that may be supplementing this program with other supplemental programs, and I'm wondering if there's a way to separate out the success rate that you're talking about based on, maybe it's the supplemental programs that certain buildings are using that might actually be causing success, and that may be getting built into your data. I don't know. I'd like to see how that maybe breaks apart.
Ms. Burton?
Yeah, so that builds on what I wanted to say. Mr. Forget, I remember about a couple of years ago, I think it was Dr. Spindler who put together a document and outlined what all the different schools were doing around their reading program, because I heard what Ms. Moriarty said in terms of, one may not be any better than the other, but then I also hear it's all about, how's it implemented with fidelity, right? And one may like one above another. There may be some supplements. So it seems to me that what we're asking for is just some overall data in terms of what our reading program is. And if it's not consistent in terms of the actual, program that's being used, certainly we should be able to know what everyone is using and whether or not they all work or not, and to what extent they work or don't work. So the data is very important. Thank you.
Mr. Stradine?
What year are we in implementing this program?
So 4 years ago, 3 schools implemented 100-book challenge, Erla and Anil. That was Valesgate, Gardner Town, and GAMS. So that was the pilot. Then the following year, so 3 years ago, all 9 schools went to Erla and Anil 100-book challenge, K2. Then we phased in 3-5, and this year we phased in K2, our core, and we're phasing in 3-5, and then the other schools, the other 6 schools next year. So there are various phases of implementation.
So by what year would you say you have your time frame to determine when this will work? Is it working? When is the magic date?
Well, I think, once we implement the full program, K5, our core, that'll begin, the time will start this year then. So it'll be 3 to 5 years from this year. That's implementation of the full program with Fidelity, for those who are doing it with Fidelity.
I'm sure the American Reading Company is very happy to hear that.
We won't continue, we won't have to continue to purchase. That's another reason we phased in. We won't have to continue to purchase.
Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. So as I'm listening to the explanations, and we're talking about a window, K through 5, and before we can get the data and the information, how does that line up with the importance of K through 2 and the importance of kids reading on grade level by grade 3, and that lag in time between 3 and 5? If someone's behind at 2 and 3, how is that impacted, and how do we wait for a 5-year study to give us information that we need probably within 2 to 3 years?
So we implemented K2, our core, the full program this year, in 6 schools. In the 3 schools that were the original 3, they did K3 this year. Those second graders rising to 3rd grade next year will receive our core in 3rd grade next year. So now we'll have the continuum for everyone to go up.
So we do have the information available. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Walker.
Yes. This will be now I think the 4th year I have asked for a report based upon a 25-year-old survey that has become, it's a book that has become a textbook, a Bible in many colleges. And in one instance, they say that Black students tend to be on the same competitive level until the 4th grade, and that there is something called a 4th grade syndrome. I asked for 4 years now, could we have a review of that? Is that true for our district? Does it happen in the 4th grade? Does it happen in the 2nd? Does it happen at all? I think we need to do that too. Look at it. Thank you.
Mr. Levinstein.
Yeah, Madam President, not so specific on this resolution, just the committee system in general. Can I have 2 minutes to talk or no?
That's not on the topic.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I just, point of
Wait,
clarification.
excuse me for a second. Mark, I don't want to cut you off, so can you put that in a question to me and we'll get it answered? Because I don't want to cut anybody off. It's not nice. Go ahead.
So I think what Mrs. Moriarty and I will do is we'll sit down and we'll look at all the presentations that we provided, whether through the curriculum committee or in a board meeting, because we have presented some of this information and the data that I hear you guys requesting. So let's just take some time this week. We'll synthesize everything that we presented and give some information to not only the board, but to the community at the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Ms. Green.
I was going to ask if we could table this and get more information and decide later, because I would like to get a little bit more information.
So we have a motion to table. Do I need a second?
Second.
Roll call to table.
Mr. Levinstein? No. Ms. Mineo?
No.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Right now, the question is to table item 7.1.
That's Ms. Green's suggestion?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
7.2.
Excuse me, 7.2, American Reading. Your vote is yes?
Yes.
Ms. Burton?
No.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? No. Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
That item is tabled.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Ms. Moriarty. We're going to move on to our assistant. Yes, Mr. Forget.
So I apologize, Madam President, but could we have some specifics as to what you would like us to collect so that you can make that decision?
How effective has the program been for K through 2 specifically?
Okay.
3-5 is okay, but I'm mostly focused on K through 2 because to me that's the most crucial.
Okay.
And the program has been in effect for, I think she said 3 years, and they're looking at 2 more. I'm just trying to figure out what do they think is going to happen in 2 more years if we don't have the data to make a decision right now.
Thank you. We'll definitely collect that. I just point of clarification, I believe the resolution is for professional development
That's
to help
correct.
build the capacity of the individual teachers to implement the program, so that if we want to see growth and improvement, the professional development will show growth and improvement as they work with the students. But by not approving this, the capacity will not be there for some of the teachers to do it at the degree that you're expecting. So I was just a little concerned, but now I understand what you're asking.
Right, and also the teachers, or do the teachers even want this professional development? Because I know there are some teachers that feel that this program is not going the way it should, so I'm even thinking about the teachers in terms of getting this professional development if they don't even want to take it.
Mr. Forget.
So what I heard Ms. Moriarty say a few minutes ago was that in the event the teachers are not willing to take it, or they do not see the need for it, then if they don't sign up, we won't offer it and we won't be charged for the professional development. That's okay. I just needed some clarification as to what we are to provide for you to make your decision. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Can I move on? Yeah? Okay. We're going to move on to the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Secondary, Ms. Soto.
Madam President, our division presents to you agenda items 8.1, a resolution to approve conference requests, and 8.2, a resolution to execute an agreement with Clarkston University.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items?
8.1.
Okay. So let's start this time with 8.2. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion on 8.2? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Let's move on to 8.1. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Sir?
Just curious why there's a driver listed for the retreat.
Excuse me?
Why is there a driver listed for the retreat?
Okay. Yes, sir. Mr. Forget?
So we basically do all the setup on our own. So the driver brought all the materials, all the resources, everything we need, all the equipment, the technology, all of that stuff up, and we set it up. We try to save money by doing that.
Any other questions on 8.1? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items for this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Soto. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Exceptional Learners, Mr. Bayer.
Thank you, Madam President. The Exceptional Learner Division has 2 items on the consent agenda for the board's consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Yes, sir.
9.2, please.
Anybody else? Let's start with 9.1. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Questions or discussion on 9.1? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton? Mr. Doré? Ms. Green? Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Let's go to 9.2, please. I'd like to entertain a motion. Questions or discussion? No, this is 9.2. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam President. So this Panorama Education was first purchased last year at this time, roughly. Now, I saw one of the goals in the implementation of this was it was going to be integrated with the Infinite Campus and attendance, academics, and behavior. What is the status of integrating this program with those other programs?
Mr. Bear?
So Ms. Peterson can help me with this question as well. We did spend much of this year trying to integrate. Integration is one of the hardest things to do when you buy a program like this, and it took most of the year to do so. We're at a point now we're prepared to launch it for the staff to use it for the purposes of a multi-tiered system of support. So again, survey versus this component of it will be implemented in 22-23. They are not charging us for this past year. They're going to give a discounted rate, which will work out going forward because we were not able to implement the data component of the survey in terms of taking the information and translating it into a student profile with regard to academics, behavior, and social emotional well-being.
So it's definitely going to work starting in September? It's not going to be like what we had, what was that program that was supposed to integrate with attendance?
No,
Smart, whatever.
We're there. I've seen it. It takes all the information that we described, the academic information, your iReady data, your ARC data, your SEL data, and it compiles it into a visualizer where you can look at every student and get a profile of that student. It's a wonderful, it took a while, but we're there. So it will be used, it will be rolled out to staff in the fall, and it will begin to replace, we use RTIM Direct, which is our component for looking at student tiered systems of support. This will eventually replace RTIM as a way to look at students' profiles and determine interventions that need to be put in place based on what teachers and administrators are seeing.
Mr. Fortune, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just point of clarification. I believe we implemented this 1920 for baseline surveys. Last year was not the first year. It was 2 years ago, wasn't that?
Yeah, it was 1920 that we first used. There's three components. This is the survey. We also have the visualizer, which I described, and then there's also the parent survey. We've been using the student survey now for 3 years.
And the teachers have seen these surveys?
They have. They give the results. We do it both. You can run it 100 different ways, by building, by district, by demographic, by student classroom. There's technical assistance provided, which is built into the contract to provide coaching to buildings to learn how to use the tool. It's often led by the administrators and the SEL members of that building to translate that into action in terms of what interventions, either Tier 1, 2, or 3 interventions need to occur based on either a building, classroom, or individual profile of what we're seeing out of the data.
Mr. Forget, and then I see Ms. Peterson has her hand up. Mr. Lamar, I'll get to you.
And I believe some of the data was presented at a recent board meeting by Mr. Regan, where he shared the transitions from year to year, and he identified the needs of students at the elementary and the high school level. Did that occur?
Mr. Regan has reported repeatedly the data that came out of these surveys in various public formats.
Thank you.
Ms. Peterson?
I just also wanted to let the board know with any integration of a new program, there has to be training and development. We're at the beginning stages of just doing data checks around the data. This was an implementation of about 4 different systems into one. So it was our behavior system, our student management system, our RTI system. So it was a big integration, and it did take the latter part of the year in order for that to be completed successfully. Now it's a part of training administration and teachers on the system, as well as making sure we have correct data protocols in place for whoever is accessing it.
Mr. Lamar?
Yeah, So is this program being populated with historical data, or is this just something that's going to be new data is going to be entered into this? And if it is historical, when will the teachers be able to access that historical?
Okay, so I appreciate the question. There's two components. There's really three because I mentioned the parent survey. What we're describing that around that, teachers will be able to see. It's already up. They just need to be kind of be able to, they have their logins. They can get in if they want to. That's what we're going to work on in the fall. And it's based on historical data. The surveys they've had since we began this in 1920 and certainly can interact with student profiles, class profiles, based on both pre and post tests. We do the test in the fall and again in the spring to see what students are saying about their social and emotional well-being. I'd be happy, just so you know, when this does get launched, we can certainly present to the board the visualizer, the part that is, this is really about the survey, but be happy to show you how it's a really nice visual for how you can really see a student profile. I'd be happy to share it with the board sometime in the fall when it's up and running.
Ms. Burton?
So the part of the contract that I really like is, you know, where it says in program management that they're going to coordinate and roll out reports. So I think that's important that, you know, those reports are shared. And then I'm also looking at the professional development where it's the bullet of teaching and learning coaching sessions, customized coaching sessions to help leadership teams. So I think some clarification in terms of who are those leaders, what leadership team and what school, just for some clarity. You know, just a little bit more details I'd like to see, so that, you know, when we're looking back and measuring, we know exactly what we're talking about when you say, you know, leadership teams, like who is that? But in any case, I like Panorama, so thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Stradina?
So it's not that I have a problem with the program itself. It just, when we get presentations, it seems kind of disconnected from the buildings. So I don't get that sense that the buildings itself are using. I think it seems as if it's more of a top-level program right now. Maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem as if the building level is part of the discussion. So maybe in the fall it will be when you have more training and it actually be connected to the other systems.
Can I just respond to that? So
Sure.
Just to appreciate how it is used, the reason that we do the data collection early in May and June, we get anecdotal information out of that. We get students that tell us that they're contemplating suicide, or that they're self-harming, or that they're having problems in their homes. So there is anecdotal information that is immediately acted upon by the SEL members. The technical assistance allows them to understand how to use the reports so that they can drill down to the individual students. So we get aggregate information, which we've certainly provided to the board in terms of how the students holistically see themselves. But, you know, I'm not disagreeing with you because I hear what you're saying of, is it getting out to the building? Are the teachers' units the same way? But I know the SEL members are taking that data and really drilling down to provide interventions to kids who might be at risk.
Mr. Forget?
SEL members are social emotional learning, so it's all our PPS staff, social workers, psychologists, school counselors.
I keep asking that we don't use the alphabet because this is going out on the, you know, to the public so they don't all know what SEL is. So, okay. Mr. Forget, did you have a question? Ms. Peterson has her hand up.
I just also want the board to be aware that during our data culture project that incorporated administrators, teachers, parents, the actual group at large did want a program like Panorama that integrated and bridged the gap between many of our district data systems. So Panorama is fitting that, and we're hopeful with the launch that it will meet some of the needs that the teachers requested, and we're starting to see that in the visualizations.
Mr. Lamore, did you have another question?
Just one, so the repository of data through this program will be available in the fall? Okay.
Yes. It's there, because we just haven't trained the teachers on it.
Roll call. Anybody else questions? I just want to make sure everybody's questioned out. Okay. Roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Ms. Burton? Yes. Mr. Doré? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Let's move on to item 9.3, please. I'd like to entertain a motion. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Doré? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Ms. Roaring.
Thank you, Madam President. The Finance Division presents items 10.1 to 10.5 for routine consent this evening.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Yes, sir.
10.4, please.
Any others separate out? I'd like to entertain a motion on 10.1 through 10.5 without 10.4, please. Second. Question or discussion on those items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Green? Yes. Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
We're going to move on to item 10.4. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. So moved. Questions or discussion? Let's start with Mr. Levinstein, then Mr. Stridarn.
Thank you, Madam President. So it's a lot of money for a lot of locks, so I'm just wondering what the rationale is. Is the locks aging? Is it a security issue? Is it something that needs to be changed? Is it going to be electronically controlled? So a brief description might be good.
Ms. Roaring, do you want me to call on Mr. Velez?
I will start, and I'll ask Mr. Forget if he can jump in as this relates to security.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
So there were security audits done prior to my arrival, and one of the recommendations that came out of that was a single button to secure the rooms. There were a number of rooms that were found to be accessible. This proposal is actually a significant reduction over state contract pricing. We looked at the state contract pricing for the same items in the installation, and it was well over $600,000, so we put it out to bid, and we were able to come in under $425,000.
And it's every classroom in the district? Is that what this is for?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Forget on that.
Mr. Forget?
Well, it's 1,200, it's marked.
I am actually not familiar with this. We can get you that number. Eventually, the entire district will go. I'm not sure whether this purchase order will cover all the doors in the district. But eventually, it is our plan to do all the doors.
Mr. Stridarn?
We really need to know how many buildings this covers, because if you put it out, they didn't put it out for bid, but you have a proposal, how do you know where they're going to work?
Well, we can get you that information. I don't have that information this evening, Mr. Stridarn.
Okay, is it coming out of general fund money? Is it coming out of COVID money?
I believe this is coming out of our SMART bond.
This is actually coming from Sarissa funds, so it is federally funded. It is time sensitive because it's a project to be completed over the summer, so it's a 7-week duration.
Was this in buildings and grounds? No. So nobody has seen this until today?
Any other questions or comments on this item? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridarn?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Doré? No. Ms. Green?
No.
That item passes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Ms. Roaring. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McLemore.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda, I have items 11.1 through 11.19 for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Yes, sir?
11.5, 11.6, 11.7, and 11.12.
5, 6, 7, and 12. Okay. Anybody else? So let's start with, I'd like to entertain a motion on 11.1 through 11.19 minus 11.5, 6, 7, 12. So I need a motion. Questions or discussions on those items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron? Mr. Walker? Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Doré? Ms. Green? Mr. Howard?
All right, let's move to item 11.5, please. I'd like to entertain a motion. Questions or discussion?
Yes,
Yes,
hi.
sir.
Oh, sorry. I was wondering why this was going to be a non-tenure track. By all accounts, the gentleman's qualified, and he got his next level of certification the same week the contract was signed. I believe he got certified 3 days after the contract was signed, so he doesn't have to be probationary.
Mr. McLemore, can you answer that question?
I'm not quite sure what he said because I can't hear you clearly.
I'm sorry. He's been put on a non-tenure track, and it appears that it was because he had a conditional certificate, but I do know that he received that same week that the contract was signed.
This is a confidential personnel issue, so.
Well, I'm not saying it, I mean, what am I?
You use his name.
I didn't.
Okay,
No, I didn't.
okay.
He has received the next level certificate. Seems to me that by putting someone on a non-tenure track for this position, that if he succeeds at the position and another district wants to come and get him, he's not on tenure with us, therefore we're losing that potential value.
So if that's the case, at the time that we met with this individual, we wouldn't have it on the agenda as a contract in lieu of probation.
I guess what I'm saying is,
Can you turn on your mic, sir?
what I'm saying is, if any of these people that are on non-tenure tracks for some sort of not incomplete certification, if that certification is completed before the school year begins, can we get them on a tenure track? Because I think there's a great value to the district to have these people on tenure track rather than just lingering out there waiting for someone else to see how well they do and coach them off of us next year.
Mr. McLemore.
So once they receive their initial, it is automatically changed at the next meeting. So they become probationary. But until they get their initial, they are put on a contract. And the state has done this gracefully during COVID because there were people who could not take their test for their certification. So the state instituted, this period of time, whether it be 1 year or whether it be 2 years, that would allow them to be temporarily certified until they took the test. And so sometimes what happens is that at the time that HR meets with them, they don't have anything except a conditional, or they have an internship certificate. Thank you. And so what happens is that the board cannot vote on a person who has an internship certificate in a probationary. We can't put people in a probationary track until they have their initial certification. So once they get it, if they get it a week after the board has voted on their cert, their temporary cert, at the next meeting, we make sure that they are on a probationary track.
I checked the state website.
Microphone, sir.
I checked the state website, and he has received the next level of certification.
Go ahead.
So I'm not sure who you're talking about
Well,
or what you're talking about, but I know for a fact, before we put anyone on this board agenda, we make sure that they have their certification or they don't have their certification. The board's they're not going to go on the agenda at all. They're going to go on either as a contract in lieu of probation, or they're going to go on the agenda in a probationary track. So I'm not sure who you're referring to or what you're referring to, but.
Ms. Burton?
So now I'm really confused, but I'm only confused because are you in communication with who these folk are? In other words, what's the communication between the two? Because if he's saying he sees something on a website and you're saying, well, no, I know for sure, we have what we have. So what's the communication between you and these people who have now come before us?
So there's only one or two people that have access from state ed to go on to teach in this district. That's me as the assistant sup for HR, and it's another person. I can't remember who the other person is. But we have the ability to check, to go on to teach, to check whether a person has their certification or not. That's what we go by. We cannot go by anything else except what is listed on Teach. Now, there's a way that you can go on Teach without my access, but you would have to have the person's social security number in order to do that. Other than that, if there's 5 Mike Macklemores out there, you better know which one that you're researching, or you're going to end up with the wrong one. We can't risk putting someone on the agenda for the board to vote on that's incorrect.
Thank you. We're going to confirm. Mr. Stridiron.
So I went on to teach. I go on to teach every 2 weeks to check the agendas. You don't need any social security numbers. You just need the first and the last name, which is on the agenda. And then you can see where they live, roughly, and you click on that, you get detail, and it gives you all the certificates. So, I mean, there's not another whatever, I'm not going to say the name, but it's not rocket science. So.
Okay. Mr. Macklemore. Mr. Macklemore, do you have? Okay, never mind. That's it. Ms. Burton?
Yeah, I'm just really a little disappointed here because you have people who are on our agenda, and to me, I would think that they would know that they're on the agenda for what we're getting ready to vote on. And if they're not in contact with HR about this, I don't know why we have 2 board members who are sitting here telling us what somebody's personal business is with HR. I mean, this is really like confusing. I don't get it. Why aren't they here and haven't contacted Mr. Nakamura and HR, knowing that they're on this agenda for tonight? And if it's incorrect, they have a responsibility to go back to HR and clear up this mess. I don't get it.
Mr. Macklemore, gently.
So, Madam President, the board agenda is due at certain times during the week prior to the board meeting. We meet with people prior to those items being due to Matthew. If something transpires let's take this for ha-has, this particular case. If this case that we're talking about happened at the time that the board agenda items were due, I can conceivably think that that might be the case. And if that's the case, the board agenda items were already due to Mr. McCoy. It was set, and if we didn't know anything about it, then there was no way to change it.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. I understand. Mr. Levinstein?
I'm just saying that I trust Mr. McLemore's judgment that what he's doing is in the best interest of the district in putting these people forward, and I thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. McElroy, you didn't do anything wrong here. That's not what I'm saying. It's just after the fact, after you submitted, the person got the certification, and we were just wondering if we could just change this. Well, we don't need to, though. If you said we don't need to, it just goes in automatically in the next meeting. That's fine. That's it.
So that was the answer. That was the discussion. We're done now. Okay, everybody? We're done. We're on item 11.5. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein? Yes. Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
I'm going to say that we're going to look at 11.6, 11.7, and 11.12 all together. And 11.12. Okay, so let's do 6 and 7 together. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron? Yes. Mr. Walker? Yes. Ms. Burton? Yes. Mr. Doré? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes. Mr. Levinstein? Yes.
Let's move to 11.12. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Mr. Lamar.
I'm just curious if there are any other elementary schools that have co-principals? And also if, and I'm just curious why this position is being funded through the ARP money? Since that doesn't reduce, classroom size or improve air quality or anything like that, it's just another administrative position.
Thank you. Mr. Forget.
Yep. The only school that has a co-principal would be Newburgh Free Academy, where we have, because it's really one school with multiple campuses, we have a co-principal at Maine and a co-principal at North. So that's the only school that has a co-principal. We're requesting to have this co-principal put in place because we have the principal from that school is retiring at the end of October. In order to maintain consistency and sustainability for the students in that school, we would like to be able to place that principal, the new principal in there as of the day after this meeting in the best interest of the program and the kids in that school, and allow that other co-principal that's going to sunset on October 31st to assist with district-wide initiatives that are school-based, response to intervention, AIS, and all of those particular things.
Any other questions on that item? Ms. Green?
So the co-principal will then become the principal when that other principal resigns or retires, or they're going to still remain a co-principal?
The co-principal is going to be the principal.
That's what I'm saying. Once this principal retires, that's what I'm saying.
The one that's being hired tonight will be effective tomorrow. The one that's there now that's retiring in October will be doing school-based district-wide tasks to support the school programs.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Mr. Duray.
So when that happens, that the co-principal becomes the principal, is the co-principal position still available?
The co-principal position will be eliminated on October 31st at the time that that principal retires.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Mr. Lamar.
As for the use of the American Rescue Plan funds?
Mr. Forget.
Is it allowable to use the ARP funds for that? I believe so. It's going to support the students that are in the classrooms. This person's going to be on special assignment doing analysis of response to intervention, supporting MTSS, addressing AIS services across the district. I can see that those need to be addressed based on the learning loss that these students have struggled with over the pandemic.
Any other questions or discussion on this item? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Stridiron. Mr. Walker. Ms. Burton.
Yes.
Mr. Doré. Ms. Green. Mr. Howard. Mr. Lamar. Mr. Levinstein. Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
That,
Wait a minute. Go ahead.
that concludes my items, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. Yes, Mr. Forget.
Just one point of clarification. I was able to get a hold of Mr. Tyndall to assure the board that the Ashcraft resolution that you just passed is for every door in the district as well as offices. He confirmed that, and he assured us that we're in good shape. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the clerk of the board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of the minutes from June 21st and June 24th.
I'd like to entertain a motion. Thank you. Second. Anybody? Thank you. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Walker. Yes. Ms. Burton. Mr. Doré. Yes. Ms. Green. Yes. Mr. Howard. Mr. Lamar. Yes. Mr. Levinstein. Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron. Yes. That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy.
Madam President, before you close,
Oh, yes.
I just want to personally apologize to Mr. McLemore, because I think that we as a board, there's a way to ask questions and there's a way to present them. But the microaggressive behavior of doing it one way and then at the end saying, well, I didn't mean that, to put the integrity of this man on the line the way it was just done, I want to apologize to you personally, the way you handled it. And I think we as a board need to do better when we have conversations with individuals in central office in public like that, because that was not necessary and it should have been done differently. To do it one way and then at the end say, well, I didn't mean that or it didn't come off that way. But the tone of the questions and the way it was handled, to me, it was disgusting, and I want to apologize to you personally as a member of this board.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Thank you, and I apologize too, Mr. McLemore. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting, please. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton. Mr. Doré. Ms. Green. Mr. Howard. Mr. Lamar. Mr. Levinstein. Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron. Mr. Walker.